Welcome to See It and Feel It with Dr. Brett. And I'm Dr. Brett. And today I'm here with Alex Bladek, a nutritional consultant and a super interesting person who's in North Carolina at the moment, right? Or for good now. Is that the deal?
Yeah, I mean, for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
You're originally from the Midwest, correct?
Yeah. From Michigan, and I lived in
Yeah.
Chicago and then now in Charlotte.
Awesome. Very cool. One of my biases I often say is that people are a little bit nicer in the Midwest. Is that true?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of
So
holding doors open and yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool. So tell us about your background a little bit. I know you've got a master's degree in counseling with some sports psychology emphasis, and now you're a nutritional consultant.
Mhm.
But tell us about the background in psychology as well.
Sure. So when I was in my undergrad program, I had wanted to go into speech therapy and after going into the field a little bit more, shadowing people, I just realized like that was not my path. And I wanted more actionable, like instant gratification, for lack of a better word. Like I wanted to be able to
Yeah.
like give people tools and resources, and that they could walk away
Mm.
from our sessions together. So I shifted into sports psych, and I got my master's in counseling, and I specialized in sport and health psychology.
Mm.
However, my passion had always kind of led me more towards the health side.
Right.
So the sports psych was something that I really loved, the tangible takeaways from that. But when I moved to Charlotte, I started my own nutrition coaching company, which I took my sports psych background and working with athletes on mental skills training through my internships and whatnot in grad school, and then um, transitioned that into how people act and behave around food.
Yeah, there's a ton of psychology, right, in any kind of coaching, but in nutritional consulting and coaching, I would imagine you're, doing a lot of work around behavior change, right, around the psychology of it. Tell us
Mhm.
more about that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of people when they come to want to work with us, they want weight loss. That's their and they want a plan of like, tell me what to eat and I'll follow the rules and I'll do the plan. And like, well, that's what you I mean, you'll get that a little bit, but what I find the more that we talk to people is that it has more to do with their beliefs around food and what's healthy
Mm,
and unhealthy, and the habits that they have around their workouts and
hmm
their food choices. And then you have your family involved, and food is social, and there's so many more pieces to the puzzle than just tell me what to eat and I'll follow the plan. Like
A
life.
100%. But let me ask you this: how many people actually follow the plan when you tell them what the plan is, even if you didn't do the other part of it?
Mm-hmm. Um, so I would probably say like 60% of our clients have success. And I say that because we are really, really big on adapting the plan to the situation. That just because in this scenario, in this part of your life, things worked out and it was great, and those goals that we had set together were working, but then life happens, like the kids get sick or someone has a birthday
Right.
or it's a weekend. Like there needs to be different scenarios or different plans for different scenarios in your life that can prove to you that you can have some sort of um, action or something that you can do in those moments where you feel like you're not doing the plan right. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I would imagine though that given the fact that you look thin and fit, that some people go, well, wait, this looks easier for you. This is a lot harder for me. How do you answer that one?
Hmm. Because I was there. I was in their shoes. Like that was not. This didn't come easily to me.
Got
Um,
it.
Yeah. So I was, after college, I didn't even dare step on a scale because I was in denial about how much weight I had gained. And after that, I went down the yo-yo diet rabbit hole of trying anything and ridiculous things to try to lose weight, but none of it addressed my relationship with food, until I got to grad school. Actually, was when I was like, oh my god.
And what are some of those common beliefs that people have regarding, food and body shapes and sizes and all this stuff
Mhm,
related to your business? What are
mhm.
some of the common themes that you see?
um So a lot of people have rules around specific food, or like, carbs are bad and sugar is bad, and
Mm,
um, that I shouldn't eat after a certain time, or
mm.
um, that you've tried different diets, and that a lot of people think that the diet worked and they lost, because you can lose 10, 20 pounds following a diet, but what they don't connect the dots on is that the diet didn't work if you gain the weight back within 6 months. Like
Right.
that didn't teach you the habits that it needed. And but then a lot of like the body image stuff that we see is, um, a lot of people want to be at their end destination very quickly. Um,
Right.
they don't want to take a longer route, but we tried to help people to learn to love where they are,
Yeah.
and that's tough. I think that's probably the hardest part of our coaching, actually.
That sounds a lot very similar to psychology and sports psychology, right? In terms of like it's a process, it's a journey,
Mhm.
and there are a fair amount of people, especially people that struggle with addictions. They're one of their addictions is they want instant results or they want shortcuts, right? So I would imagine you're doing a lot of work around that kind of psychology as well.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's, proving to themselves that, well, and I sorry, backing up. I think a lot of people come to us with frustration, and that they're like kind of at their wits end for dieting, that they're finally reaching out to a coach to help them,
Totally.
because they're, usually people are like, oh my god, I've tried everything, I've tried all the diets, I've tried everything, you name it, I've tried it. And that's when they finally reach out, is when they feel like they don't have an alternative, which is ironic because coaching only can help you accelerate your progress. But um
Well, we're in agreement there.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my job as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I have coaches too. Like I
Yeah.
have two coaches and a mentor, and I
Yeah.
just think it's so valuable for anybody looking to get where you see someone who has been where you are and now has gone through that process themselves and can help you get there too.
Yeah, that's well said. And what I'm thinking as I listen to you, I'm also thinking about some of the common beliefs in just psychology in general around not feeling good enough, not deserving, not feeling lovable. So when you go underneath,
Mhm.
most people, whether they're an athlete or whomever, right? They're struggling with, do I deserve? Am I good enough? Am
Mhm.
I on some core level lovable? And then, of course, in the nutrition or health field, right, if they have beliefs that are screwy like that, it's
Mhm.
going to be hard to sustain the weight loss, right, to make the choices over time.
Mhm.
Does that, I would imagine that's a big part of what you're dealing with as well.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think we talk a lot about people's past, their
Mm-hmm.
relationship, like what they saw their parents doing with food and dieting, and their past experiences with dieting for themselves, and just kind of how that shows up in their life now. And then I focus a lot on them taking the power now, that you have the power to change your story for your future. So we're talking about your past self, but then we're also talking about, like, who is that person that you envision for your future? And then what does that person do? And who are they? What qualities do they have? And like get them to start describing that. And then um, that's kind of where we bridged that gap then of like who they have been in their past and who they want to be. And then that's kind of where like the am I lovable? Am I good enough? Because what does that person in your future have or do or say or think about themselves that your past self isn't doing?
Yeah, no, that's very clever. I like it a lot. The future self, that's the, the successful, yeah, healthy, fit, like whoever they want to be, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you're creating that vision for the person and helping them in the journey to live into that vision.
Mhm.
Really cool, really great stuff. How do you deal with like when it gets a little bit deeper? In psychology, it's a word I haven't used in a long time, but I just thought of it talking to you. The transference issues, because as a coach, I would imagine at times people are starting to project some of their stuff onto you, and then the relationship gets tricky.
Uh-huh.
I'm trained, I'm armed to the teeth. I got giant fangs around, that, right? Dealing with when people get screwy with me, 99.9% of the time, that's how they're doing it in their primary relationships, right?
Mhm.
So I can feel the way they're approaching me is part of how they're doing their intimacy journeys or not doing them.
Yeah.
So I'm trained like you wouldn't believe to handle that. But in the coaching business, you're not necessarily trained for those deeper
Mm.
transference issues.
Mhm.
So tell me about that. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I truly I haven't noticed it a ton with my clients, and it might just be the boundaries that I set with people, that there's just certain things that I do refer out for if it's necessary, but I really haven't had that happen often. But yeah, that's a tough one. I mean,
Well, just people enact their little control dramas, and I would
mhm,
imagine you've got to have some exposure to that, right? It's like
yeah,
the way they relate to food, they're also doing a little bit of that with you, right? It's like they
yeah.
have, right, control issues around food, then they're having control issues around the coaching process with you, and then you're trying to sort of help them become more aware of all of it, I would
Mhm.
imagine, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's that specifically that brings up a woman right now who she missed one of our coaching calls this week, and then I reached
Yeah.
out to her afterwards, and then she finally responded hours later, and it was this big message of why she couldn't do it, and I did point out what I see going on, like, with her food, and I said, "I think that this is starting to kind of affect, like, you're shifting back into your past beliefs about what we
Mm.
had talked about." So, I mean, I pointed out, I guess, is how I would approach it, is that I just notice when the relationship is starting to change, because a lot of times people come in, like, super excited, and they wanna
Right.
show up for their coach, and they wanna do a good
Right.
job,
Right.
and they wanna make us proud, but then when those doubts and, fears start to
Fears.
creep
Yeah.
in, that they start to revert back to not thinking that this is gonna work, and then, of course, self-sabotage starts to come in.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next. You read my mind. I'm like, you've got to be dealing with self
Yeah,
sabotage at least
yeah,
on and off all day,
mhm,
pretty much every day,
yeah.
right? How do you handle like that conversation around self sabotage? Tell us how you take a nutritional client through the fundamentals. I teach the fundamentals of the mental game,
Yeah.
meditation, mindfulness, visualization, breath work, positive self-talk, and so
Mhm,
on. How
mhm.
do you take people through the fundamentals of self-sabotage as it relates to nutrition and health and well-being?
Um, well, so first they need to be aware that they're doing it because a lot of
Yeah,
times I think people have never looked at their relationship with food as something that can change, or that can be like that they can get educated on, and because food, we're fortunate to live in a world that it can get put on the back burner, and it's just like we know that we're going to eat, and that you can forget to eat, or you just swing through a drive through, or you can grab whatever's easy. So I think a lot of times like the self-sabotaging comes up when people think that it's too hard, or they start to have these beliefs about like this isn't going to work again. I'm going to fail at this. Like it's, it's too much. And so I guess that's where I just start the conversation about what, obviously what we had been doing is not working. So
Mhm.
what is, I try to turn things back to them to get them talking more.
Right.
A lot of people tell me that my style of coaching is, like I don't lay it out for you in bullet points, follow this step, do this. Like I continuously ask questions and pull out from people, well, why do you think that's happening, or what about this feels hard right now? um, and then we readjust and try something different as
Yeah. No, it sounds pretty cool. It sounds like you're blending the psychology and the counseling and the nutritional consulting, right? It's all sort of part of the same mix to help people, let go of those limiting beliefs and self-sabotages and things that are in the way of them developing healthier habits around food in particular. Is that accurate?
yes.
Very, very cool. What are you curious about? What do you want to ask me while you got me on this end of this
Yeah.
experience?
um I guess when you're working with athletes, well, do you work primarily with athletes? I'm sorry.
I do. I work primarily with athletes and entrepreneurs. That's where
Okay.
my perspective is that, the fun part about athletes and business people is in general, they have a higher drive towards excellence. And
Mhm.
so that commitment to excellence is a lot of fun for me.
Mhm.
I say we because I'm an identical twin, and we were really good athletes growing up, and the drive is just there. And so when you're working with people with a higher drive, it can be super intense, as you know. It can get complicated, but it's a lot more fun if I have an intense side. I have a playful side, but I also have an intense side. So
Mhm.
yeah, mostly athletes and mostly business people.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you see come up for them as far as like their own self-sabotage for a business owner? Since I'm a business owner, I would like to hear.
Well, it's like the metaphor is like, I used to play this golf course in Westport, Connecticut, where I lived for 17 years. And it was a par 69 course. And, at some point I became a single digit handicap golfer and, was breaking 80 regularly. And then I just, developed a lot of, mental game skills, and my ability, even though I was only playing once a week, kept coming down and down and down. And so, meaning it kept improving. And so this mental barrier around 70 took me forever to break. To break 70 was entirely mental, not physical. I
Mhm.
blew up on the 18th hole. I can't tell you how many times, and shot 70, 71, 72, whatever it was. And
Mhm.
so, really most people are struggling with, do I deserve, am I good enough, or, that sort of ceiling or limiting belief of, can I allow myself to be truly successful way beyond things like just success in a sport or money. Really putting this thing together across the board is very challenging. I've worked with all kinds of like, super, super talented hedge fund managers and people that are worth hundreds of millions. I even worked with a billionaire once, and some really tough athletes. And to put it together in their personal life and career, it takes a lot of skill sets.
Mhm.
Some of them a little bit opposite. Intimacy takes the allowing and being piece, nowhere to go, nothing to accomplish, nothing to achieve. And that's sort of counterintuitive and opposite of
Mhm.
a driven business person or athlete that's always, if you're too oriented towards goal setting, well, that's not going to be great for your personal life, your wife or husband or whatever. They're going to appreciate the being, right? Nowhere to go.
Mhm.
So developing both skill sets in this lifetime is, can be a beast.
Mhm.
So what I'm doing is I'm teaching people how to do both ultimately. And at times in their careers, they're going to be, if they're in their 20s, they might be more focused on financial success or drive or the success in the sport. And then the intimacy part is important, but it might not be primary. And so we're always working with that sort
Mhm.
of, balance and finding out, tweaking it for whoever that individual is, because we're all wired a little bit differently as well.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It actually
Yes.
resonates a lot.
Really? In which ways? Tell us how that resonates. I
Um,
love it, but tell us how.
yeah. So I started my business, I don't even know now how many, 5 years ago. And but when I started it, it was actually my intention was to work with athletes on mental skills training, and then that
Yeah.
has evolved. So I would really say I started focusing on nutrition in the last 4 years. So I mean, not a long transition period, but um, I, over the last year, have 4 times my income, and a lot of that I attribute to like getting my goals nailed down and like just, kind of getting my systems in place and just grinding basically like
Yeah,
the last
grinding.
year has
Love gotta
been
love athletes. We know how to grind. Yeah. Well said.
um,
Yeah.
so that I have a hard time turning off the business
Right.
mode.
Yeah.
So
Are you a meditator? Because like, I tell people I've done 4 or 5 thousand hours of meditation in my lifetime, and I find that the meditative states are super helpful, especially if you're not near an ocean. Here we're 600 yards from the ocean. So if
yeah,
I throw myself in the ocean, it's like a meditative state,
exactly.
right? You just let go. What do
Um,
you do, to like besides like run or lift or what? You look like you're in shape. So obviously you're exercising, but what do you do to let go, like in terms of meditation or mindfulness practice?
Um, so I do have a morning routine that I go through, and there's a short meditation on it.
Uh,
But then, that's typically with me like listening to podcasts, not the meditation part. I do the meditation, but then I transition into podcast, coffee, just kind of like enjoying my morning. But I don't do anything during the day and I don't do
Yeah,
anything at night. And I think
gotcha.
that's where I struggle with, because I'm like in the morning I'm alone, like my husband is at work or at the gym or something. So and that's
Hmm.
time for me that I need, to
Right.
like feel good going into my day. But
Hmm.
at night, as far as like turning off and just connecting again, I struggle.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
One of the things I often say, Alex, with people is if you're tired, stressed, or bored, meditate.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my fundamental coaching around meditation. If you're tired, again, tired, stressed, or bored. So if you get in that second or third meditation, especially for a real meditator like you are, you know how to meditate. You're probably good at it. You probably enjoy it in the morning. So why not add a second one or third one in at some point during the day? It'll
Mhm.
help you by evening. And like, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It can be 5 or 10 minutes, but that little, like, what I do here, because, I'm not structured by nature. It's just not how I'm wired. So, people ask me, like, how do I meditate or when do I meditate? And I meditate often, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. I'm a feel player. I meditate by feel as well. People that are more structured, they feel like they've got to do it a certain way. And then that's when I say, let's just add an extra one, in the afternoon or early evening if you're tired, stressed, or bored, or just out of habit, because then that's going to allow more of that being piece to come back
Mhm. Mhm.
when you're in the grind work mode. It sounds like you're very talented that way. You know how to grind, you know how to work hard, but can you let go and be?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not the easiest thing. Traditionally, that's more male, right? It's like male energy, right? Where
Mhm.
they can't turn off the work, and then the woman is just like, after 5 years of that, what am I doing,
Yeah.
right? So that ability to sort of switch gears, meditative states I find are immensely helpful in the ability to sort of switch gears. And
Mhm.
then the mindfulness practice where you're observing and you're breathing, you're bringing yourself back in the moment by either observing what's in front of you
Mhm.
or picking up your breath or doing both. When you're doing that, when your husband comes home, he doesn't have to know you're doing it. Like
Right.
if you're playing with your breathing,
Mhm.
he won't necessarily know unless
Yeah.
he's super tuned in.
Right.
Unless he's super tuned in. And
Mhm.
most people aren't that tuned in, so you can actually do whatever you want that way.
Mhm.
And these little things will actually, as you start to practice them more, that'll help you in those little big transitions, right?
Yeah.
From work mode to just being mode.
Mm. You think about the first time that I learned how to do like practice mindfulness was I was training for triathlons, and my coach was also in school for sports psychology, and that's how we met. And um, I was telling her how terrible I was like, these runs, they're so long. The bike
Yeah,
is so boring. Like, I was a
totally.
swimmer, so I'm used to being in a pool
Right.
and just like, that I can zone out there. But
Right.
the other two, it was a struggle. And so she was like, okay, well, instead of thinking about how much like other stuff you have to do, going through that laundry list in your head, and instead start just paying attention to how your body feels, or paying attention to like the smells around you, or what the leaves look
Exactly.
like on the trees, and start to take in your environment and like really just love absorbing that, instead of being like thinking about how bored you are.
Totally, and that's what you're doing is you're training your mind to come back into the moment, right? To observe the trees or observe someone's face,
Mhm,
or even as you're paying attention to your thoughts, you're now getting present again,
mhm,
right? And that because what most people are doing is they're sort of caught up in the same repetitive patterns. You deal with it all the time around food, but athletes, especially long distance athletes, they need to be able to drop in the zone. It sounds like, your ability to sort of do that as a swimmer is something you like learned or taught yourself or just had it naturally.
mhm.
Now what you're doing is you're playing with it everywhere else in your life.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'm living and teaching. You're
Yeah.
always playing with mindfulness or meditative states or your breath. It's just a more creative way to live from
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yeah. I love that. That actually, so one of the things that we teach our clients is, um, it's part of our teaching to them is to eat slow, and to be more mindful around your food. And
Totally.
yeah, so
Yeah.
eating, when I used to meet with people in person, which was like when I first started, I was driving all over town to like get any client that I could. And now
Right.
everything is online, everything's virtual. But when I met people in person, I would have them do an exercise with me that I would bring like candy or something, if they had whatever in their house. Um, and then I did start doing it with a fruit bowl. I figured that was probably better, but but I would have them eat like a strawberry, and not really like just keep talking, but like, hey, eat the strawberry, da da da, eat the strawberry. And then the next time I said, okay, now eat this strawberry. But this time, I don't want you to talk. I'm not going to talk. I want you to smell it, get the textures, what it looks like. I want you to observe the strawberry, then eat it, and eat it slow. And every time people will be like, oh my God, that is the best strawberry, or that is the best, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Wow, that tasted amazing. And was that like the best piece of pineapple I've ever had? And it's truly because you're paying more attention to the food instead of being mindless about it, where that's where a lot of people struggle too, is with snacking.
Yeah.
Especially during quarantine, that has been a very common challenge, is that people are just
Absolutely.
around food all
Absolutely.
the time. But when going out to a restaurant or eating those foods that you're telling yourself like, "Ooh, I really shouldn't be eating this dessert right now." I'll say, "No, eat the dessert, but you're going to eat it slow and enjoy every bite and savor it and love that piece of dessert of whatever you
Yeah.
chose." Like, that is something that you don't need to feel bad about it, but you need to love every minute of it,
Yeah.
because
I
that
love it.
yeah.
I love it, Alex, because it's something that these exercises that you're doing with your clients, I do with the athletes I coach, right? So I often say, because I've been eating with chopsticks on and off since my first girlfriend was half Chinese, right? So 30 years ago, whatever. But so I get these kids to eat with chopsticks, but then say, okay, great. now if you're a righty, I want you to eat with your left hand,
Yeah.
right? First, you could start with a fork, but
Yeah.
then you're going to build up to chopsticks with the
Yeah.
opposite hand. I actually do this a lot myself because it forces me to do exactly what you just talked about, to actually slow down and
Mhm.
get more present and not, wolf down the food,
Right.
right? Because that's a big part of, when you, as you know, right, when you eat slower, not only do you enjoy it more, but there's also a more decent, the better chance you're not going to eat as much because,
More
right, you're going to
satiated.
slow the whole
Yeah.
process down.
Mhm.
So yeah, so there's so many ways to get clever, and one of them is definitely eat with the opposite hand, do
Yeah.
things with the opposite hand, take a different way to work.
Yeah.
Let's like make this thing more clever and more creative, but also more mindful, right? And that's what it's fascinating the similarities between,
Yeah.
just coaching in general, and whether it's an athlete or an entrepreneur or nutritional coaching and consulting, we're doing a lot of similar stuff. It's pretty
Mhm.
awesome.
Mhm.
You sound like an amazing person here. I'm really
Thank
impressed
you.
to meet you.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
making a difference, which is cool. I'm always like, I always love it when people want to assist other human beings on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just really cool.
Yeah. So one of my goals for the rest of this year is to finish a course, so that way I can reach more people with this type
Hmm.
of approach. Because right now we're very limited. So I have two coaches that work for me, but
Hmm.
we're limited in our capacity. We only take on a certain number of clients per month, and um, so in order to reach more people, we started doing a group program, but yeah, I want to do a course. I'm talking, it's in the works with my coach right now, like in the planning phases for it, um but it is nice to hear from you too, like the approach that we're taking is I think tangible and something that applies to a lot of different people, and it doesn't matter like what field I guess you're in. But yeah.
No, I mean, with all these years of experience that you have, you're realizing that you're just, people have different personality styles and approaches, right? And so as you get more, present and more in tune and more flexible on your end, all you're doing is getting better and better at just tweaking your core program,
Right.
right? To meet the needs of individuals when you're doing individual coaching.
Mhm.
But the overall program that you're putting together, I would imagine the patterns are so you've seen so many of these patterns that you can pretty much help anybody at this stage.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's, a lot of, I would say I just actually before this was on a call with a prospective new client, and um, everyone has their own unique challenges, like their own unique facets to their life, but everyone's also so similar in what
So
the
true.
challenges are. Um, and I think that's where those core beliefs that that are so ingrained in psychology that um, that's where all of this comes back to. Like all of that comes back to, am I enough? Am I lovable? And
Do I deserve?
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then all the patterns around self sabotage.
Mhm.
Alex, absolute pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
Welcome again to See It and Feel It with Dr. Brett. And you want to say anything about the fuel method before we go here? What is it you
Sure.
want to? Yeah.
Well, if anyone would like to learn more about the fuel method, you can go either to my website, www.thefuelmethod.com, or you can find me on Instagram, which is where I share more like personal behind the scenes type stuff and tons of takeaways and lessons and all that stuff is at the fuel method. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Awesome. Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Cool.